Hola, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Movies looks at dot. This week we're looking at 499. Now, 499 is a documentary about Mexico. Next year is the 500th year anniversary of when Cortez traveled from Veracruz to what is now Mexico City. And this is a hybrid film that kind of looks at that and the history of Mexico. So, what do you guys think? It's a very, very broad question.
Go ahead,
Oh, and
Danny.
let me just say right now, I'll say right now, this movie just came out. We will try to avoid major spoilers. We will avoid major spoilers, but along the way, we might let something slip that pertains to the film. So there will be some minor spoilers, but we won't ruin anyone's viewing enjoyment of it. We'll try our best not to, at least.
Yeah,
Um, so I guess the easier question, instead of what do you guys think, what did you think of the premise?
I loved it. Um, I loved it and hated it. I guess this thing about I don't know. So here's the first thing. I guess it's conflicting for somebody like me I'm an immigrant from Mexico and everything, and knowing a lot of the history of especially of the conquistadores and what they did to the Aztecas. It's shitty, but seeing the dream for Hernan Cortez to live on and seeing what we get in the documentary is kind of just sad, and where Mexico's history doesn't really change whatsoever. Uh, the For me, I feel like the movie left a huge impression where I want to talk about it with a lot of my a lot of the immigrants that we came over here, like a lot of family members. So it hit hard. It hit pretty close to home. A lot of the stuff that they talk about in the documentary, I still see in local news. Um, it, it, it's just it's what is it, like a bittersweet type of thing, like movie. I really enjoyed it. I just At the end of it, I just felt sad and really terrible about it.
And Blake, what did you know? Blake obviously isn't Mexican, but you live in a border town, and like the Mexican culture has been pretty ingrained in your life, I would imagine. So,
Definitely.
uh, so what do you think about the movie and the premise? We can kind of touch on. It's like Danny
Oh,
mentioned.
yeah. No, I think we have to kind of explain what it is.
Yeah,
It's basically a conquistador who washes up on shore 500 years later, right? So it's now
right.
he's seeing basically the effects 500 years later after their arrival. And I thought it was a really creative, unique, and interesting way to get you to pay attention,
Mhm.
to a thing that not not interesting. But kind of like Danny's saying, it's a rather tragic thing that you experience, and to do it in the way that they did, it really kept my attention. That was the quietest our text thread had ever been on
Yeah.
one of these things, because we were definitely all three very much paying attention, watching it, and we'd have our jokes here and there, but it was extremely well done, and I thought incredibly creative, and didn't tell tales that I thought it was going to tell.
No, that's absolutely true, and they escalate or devolve really,
Right.
Yeah.
and the way as he's getting deeper into Mexico, the stories get even worse. Um, so the premise of the do you think now you kind of bring up an interesting point, Blake? Like the documentary, it's interesting, but you both said it's tragic, it's sad, it's hard to watch. If the movie didn't have this, and one of this isn't a big spoiler because the movie describes it as kind of the history of Mexico seen through the eyes of a wandering ghostly conquistador is kind of how it describes the movie. So do you think this movie would work without that premise? It was just a series of tales of the tragedy of what is Mexico.
No, I don't think it would work the same. It wouldn't have the same effect, I think, that we have with this film. I
Right.
feel, I feel like seeing the what is it, the fruit of labor type of thing, going completely sour. I think is a good contrast of the two time periods. Uh, it's just it yeah, I don't think it would work without that point of view. I think that point of view is it works well, especially I guess if you know where the I guess the shittiness of Mexico lies or stands. It's just like another story being told, and I don't think it would just go on deaf ears. And I feel
Right.
this does a better job with having two points of view, showing what happens because you get the narration, and then you get the story. Um, the history lesson, and then you get what's happening now. And I feel that to me was so poignant. It felt like every time that you got something from the conquistadores to what we get with the Mexican citizens now was just a punch in the fucking gut. To I guess like a punctuation mark every single time. Like this is what's happening now. Like bam.
Right. I'd agree with you. Like, I don't think this would work without the conquistador premise to it because there's actually a really cool character arc in it. Like, you get this conquistador who's like, okay, they're savages and we're here and we're gonna fix everything. And once I get to the heart of the country, it's the most beautiful, it's heaven on earth. Things are gonna be wonderful. And then he travels and he's hearing, it's a weird, it's not a docudrama, it's not a documentary, it's not a fictional movie, so you have this weird, but it's all joined together too. It's not like
It's
it's not a
both
bunch
of
of
those
shorts.
things.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's super creative. But I don't think it would work as a straight documentary. Like it would just be too. It would be too much. It would be way too much. When you have the, it's almost comedic in the beginning with the conquistador going to the school and telling them he's
Yeah.
come to conquer their lands and
And he looks
you
like
know
Marty
he's,
Friedman, and it's hilarious.
and it's hilarious. Yeah, I think that without that element to it, it would just be way too much. So, my question to you guys is it too much style over substance?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a really cool idea. Obviously this is like this is definitely like the brainchild of like one particular person.
Right.
I would think, and I feel like I think it's a really successful way to give you a history lesson in a unique way and tell modern stories. I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was really great actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it would? So I thought that at times, like I loved I actually preferred the stuff with the conquistador.
Mm.
It got a little too heavy for me, the documentary side of it.
Oh, fair.
Always was interesting, but it just kind of. I think at one point someone said like, "Well, that got dark real quick." Like it just kind of turned
Well,
on
that
its.
escalated quickly.
Yeah.
I think that the premise is awesome. It's really awesome, but I don't know if it'll have mainstream appeal. I mean, I don't know if it would anyway, but I think even in somewhere like El Paso or even Mexico, I'm not sure how many people would get into it because I mean, it's super artsy. It's really artsy. Um,
Yeah, but I would say even the real stuff, and honestly, it took me a second to be like, okay, shit, this is like real. Like this is a real person telling a real
Yeah.
story, because it's shot. It doesn't change the way it's shot, which is kind of an
no.
interesting
And that's
thing.
so great
There's,
about it.
yeah, I completely agree.
Mhm.
But once the real stuff set in, I was much more. I mean, not. I do love history stuff, but I was much more intrigued by the current stuff. Like the one about I guess it was the mother of the police officer that had gone missing,
Mm.
and they were
Oh,
talking
right,
about they
right.
were plunging spikes into the ground and smelling for like putrefaction and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, there's so many missing people in Mexico that
Yes.
that's got to be, there could be a whole documentary just on the people that do that. You know what I mean? So I was, once the real stuff came around, I was much more intrigued. I mean, there's some gut wrenching stuff. I mean, this is not for the
Mhm.
yeah, not for the faint of heart, really. Like there's some stories and stuff that's in this that is appalling.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but the other thing about it that I get back to is it's so real. Like as artistic as it is just as real when it gets that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you get getting away from the storytelling and the real stories? What did you guys think of the production values? I thought it was beautiful. I think
It
this
was
thing.
money well spent. Like that's the way I could say it. There was one shot I think the skyline, just like the ocean meets the sky, and I think both of me and you, Pat, were just like, yeah, this is great. This is great scenery. I honestly, what Blake was saying about like there is no essentially cuts between the narration or the narrator, the storyteller, I guess, and what we get. It's very fluid. I feel like it. This is a very natural storytelling type of thing, and I really do like the production values of all of this. It works flawlessly, I think.
Yeah, that's really well done too. It's told in chapters, but not chapters between the fiction and the nonfiction. That just kind of seamlessly integrates itself. And any pictures that you've seen of it, you can see it's a conquistador just sitting on a city street, hanging out with people dressed like the three of us. Like
Hmm.
it's a seamless integration of it, and it is a beautifully shot movie. So recommend it, Danny. What do you think? Would you recommend it? Like,
I think after we were done with this, I went to go talk to my parents, and I talked about this documentary to them, and I was like, "Listen, this is just really, really good." And I think a mutual friend of ours were playing video games. I was like, "Hey, listen, when this movie comes out, like, make sure you're paying attention to it because this is something that we should all kind of have in our like not background, but like in us to be like, how about like just a conversation like what we're doing right now, especially if you're into like Mexican studies and all this. This is perfect for modern Mexico history or the current history of Mexico and the past. I feel it's a must see.
Blake, any final
Uh,
thoughts?
I would agree with Danny. I would say this is a very a really great watch. If you have any interest at all in especially if you know nothing about Mexico or nothing about you know any of this, I think it's a really interesting and great way to watch some of this stuff. And like I said, it's not easy, but it's definitely entertaining and well done. And you're better for it by the end of it. You're definitely it definitely food for thought. Makes you think about other things. Even in this crazy world that we're living in now, kind of makes you realize there's still other stuff going on out there in the
Yeah.
world.
Absolutely, and I agree with you too. Maybe not as strongly, but it seems like everything you read online is like, I'm under quarantine. What can I watch to kind of make me happy and get away from this? This is something that's really good to watch during quarantine,
Yeah.
but it's kind of to remind you of how good we have it, even in these shitty times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that even as a person who may like documentaries, because this maybe it's been done before, but I've never seen anything done like this before. So I think it might be off-putting to some people. Like some people might find it a little too pretentious or a little too over the top. But yeah, if you're into Mexican culture, for sure, watch it. If you're into like history as we're like current the current political landscape, that it's worth it for all of that. If you're an art film person, you'll definitely love it.
Definitely.
But check, I would, yeah, I recommend it. You can watch us every single week here on YouTube, where we will look at some movie or another that grabbed our attention. So far, we've talked about But Boy, we've talked about The Exorcist 3 and 499 here. So we're all over the map. So come and see us here on YouTube every week. You can also listen to us on Adventures in Movies, which is now also on YouTube. Find us on Spotify and what do I normally say? Apple iTunes, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Online, all that good stuff. But come check us out wherever you can find us because there's nothing better to do.
Too true.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Bye, guys.
Peace.